you worked for a very long time at the World Council of Churches, and there was a mention in passing, there was much you said about how the Commonwealth was not about Commonwealth at all, and how African women in particular, economically and otherwise, at risk and marginalized. But you mentioned there that when you were working for the WCC, you conducted a study on violence against women. Is that?
No, it doesn't. The direct studies on violence against women were right here at the center, but at the World Council, I was Deputy General Secretary.
Mm.
I didn't have program. But I was very close to the women's desk, naturally, because and the study, I think the study out of which this violence thing came is the first there was women, and there was the Constance Harvey's study, which was cooperation of women and men in church and society, something like that. You can check the actual titles. This study, the originating motive came from the women's desk at the time when Brigadier Bam from South Africa was the executive for the women's desk. And they had decided to have this study, which I think eventually was called Community of Women and Men in Church and Society. And then the Central Committee had decided that they should lodge the study in Faith and Order. If they lodge the study in Faith and Order, then the council will support. So okay, lodge it in Faith and Order. So the study was lodged in Faith and Order, and an American woman theologian, Constance Harvey, headed the study, Community of Women in Church and Society. That went on, I think it was a 3-year study or something, and got reported. Now, out of that study, just around that time, the UN concentration on women, generally the UN decade for women and so on, started. And at the end of the UN decade, the women said the decade has come to an end. We have checked the UN efforts. We didn't see any church featuring in the UN decade for women. So what are the churches doing? So out of that came the 1988 World Council study, which was called Decade of the Churches in Solidarity, Decade of Churches in Solidarity with Women. And it is as part of this Churches Solidarity with Women that this issue of violence came in. I went to the council around that time. I was in the council first in the youth department, then I came back doing my own teaching, and then was invited back to the deputy position. So 87, I was there when the women were preparing to confront the Central Committee with the fact that the churches have done nothing. And we got this program approved with all kinds of codicils. They were approved and called Churches Decade in Solidarity with Women. Several issues came under this. Several issues came in, and this violence against women was one of the issues. So I was helping to work with it, but it wasn't my my program director. But my portfolio as Deputy General Secretary included the programs that everybody is doing. So I was in everybody's meeting as I wanted.
But it was very interesting when the United Nations Millennium Goals were revised for what we have now, the Sustainable Development Goals. They conducted, I understand, it was the biggest study ever of people on the ground in terms of what ways we could address them creatively and holistically. And as part of that, I think, for more than before, churches were involved in setting out what the Sustainable Development Goals could achieve. What do you see as the ways that churches could begin to address violence in the home, in society, and not just of the physical kind, which must be addressed, but violence exists in an environment where the way we speak sometimes very, very, very casually, in ways that might objectify women and that makes them easier to abuse. How can do you see any hope for religion being able to?
Yeah, the thing is, the process as I've seen it is that as long as the women keep quiet, nothing happens. Because for the community study, it is the women who raised it. We raised the community study, and then we used a popular form of research. We sent to all the churches, to all the women's groups. We went around. We used the same touching the grassroots, as they used to call it, with the issues. So with the decade, we did the same. And with the decade, we decided that, okay, we said community of women and men, but we didn't see the men's participation in the first round. So this one, we're going to make it like compulsory. We sent people to go to the churches, and they went to the churches all around the world, 2 women, 2 men, to come to the church and say, what are you doing about this? So the part of what has happened is that the women raise the issues, they go ahead to work on it, and then the stance looks like an antagonistic stance to men, and the men back off, and they wait only to sabotage at the end of it. Or as with the World Council, they would always say, like the first one, the community study, they said you can do anything. They did the same with the decade, as long as you don't touch ordination. They will always put things like that. And then we say, oh, okay, violence against women minus ordination, we will still have violence against women to deal with. So I think what has created the atmosphere in which even today, when you mention gender studies, they think of women.
Yes.
Is that we are the people, the women are the people who are hurting. So they say it, and then they go ahead to work on it, and not involving the men, we ink in the antagonism even more. And even when you have tried to rope them in, then you get very few men now saying, yeah, no, we can see what you are saying. The violence is very much like that. On this continent, even right here in Trinity, there are men who are beating their wives. But you are not supposed to talk. Because if you voice it, you are washing the family's dirty linen in public. And then somebody like me will say, well, okay, now what's the solution? Don't get the linen dirty. Once you get the linen dirty, I will wash it out there. They say, oh, that's a bad woman. So the stigmatization of the women who are vocal is part of what keeps the violence on. And how to get the community, both the men and the women, to see that stigmatizing people who are fighting for justice just gives the community the reason to continue the violence. Because then the whole community thinks it's okay to beat the woman. So why is he talking? But if we can stop stigmatizing the women who are opening up these wounds for everybody to see, maybe things will change. I think, for at least for this country, one of the reasons that a lot of these women's groups are on TV and everywhere talking is that the FIDA, the women lawyers, started doing pro bono work for women who are abused, and that gave the women courage to talk. The police, the government, I don't know how it happened, but now I think now it's called Gender and Children or something, but whatever the government arm that deals with violence, they themselves openly said the women will not come to talk for two reasons. They say we will not be believed.
Right.
If we go to the police to say this, we will not be believed. So we are not going. And then even when we are believed, the family will come to the police, will go to the court, they say, oh, we've resolved it. It's some kind of arbitration so that we never get to the point of justice. And this is the area where some of the women's groups, especially the lawyers, are helping us to deal with it. If the thing is wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't need any arbitration, which will not change the situation.
Yeah, no, it was interesting when this conference came to be organized by Dr. George Osman Batsat is taking the leads and has invited NGOs, and he said to us that now was a time where these topics were finally much more in the news. I mean, you're saying the women are still not happy to talk, but the ministry is there and is
right. So now they have a place to go to. They have a place to go to. Now they know that they will be listened to. But previously, you will not even go because, first of all, the family will prevent you from going. You are a bad woman if you go and say I'm being beaten.
Yeah.
But now they know that there's a place to go. And at least there's one woman who started a safe space for abused women just across here. And had a hotline for women to call, and we'd house them for a little while. And then she's herself a lawyer. Now she's done theology, and I think it's with she's at Angela. I'm sure she will be somewhere in this your group. Angela.
And other churches, are they vocal too? Are they? Because it sounds like, I mean, just wandering around, our insight is limited, but religion infuses things much more publicly here, everything here, than it does in our own context. So they would need to be on board. And are they?
That's what we all hope will happen. But you see, let me take my little congregation where I worship almost every Sunday. When you raise a conversation around women being violated in several ways, or rape, or anything, they switch back to the old format that says it is her fault.
The women themselves.
Yeah. The church women are still at the point where everything that goes violates, it is the woman who called for it. They are like that. So the churches are not moving because the women have stayed in the traditional mode of it is okay for a woman to do this and to do that. I took a program, a suggestion to the Women's Fellowship in my church because I had been very close to the women's NGOs around it. I made it my business. I was in every one of their meetings, so I became part of it. we had a seminar on incarcerated women,
Okay.
and we invited one of the top prison officers to come and talk to us. And after that, we went into groups and we all decided what we will do. I said, okay, I'll take it to my church and see what my sisters they would say. One issue that came out in that seminar was when men go to prison, everybody falls over themselves to go and visit them.
Right.
Children, wives, girlfriends. Somebody was even joking that their girlfriends, they make a schedule so that they don't come and meet.
Yeah.
Everybody is visiting them. When the women go to prison, nobody visits. Not even their children.
So there's a space for the bad boy, but there isn't a space
There is
for the
precisely what my women's group said.
woman. Yeah,
The women have no right to be bad.
yeah,
They have no business being in prison. That was their response.
right. So they've
Yeah.
kind of internalized a
They-
process
the
whereby
women-
they are part of the problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
They are themselves part of the problem. So my women's group would not buy my Insawan prisons is for women.
Yeah.
My Insawan prisons visits. They said no. They said, oh, but Auntie Mercy, we are already visiting the Bostal Institute. That the Bostal Institute is a correctional center for young boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, you will not believe it. But those boys you are visiting, maybe their mothers too are in Insawan because it is the same man who is creating a dysfunctional family and beating the wife. Who knows whether it is beating the wife that boy also took a stone and threw at somebody. You know. So they refused. So I went to my Bible study group. That Bible study group has a lot of problems with me because I'm always
You are subversive.
subversive. So I went to my Bible study group and gave my spiel on all of this. And they adopted the program.
Yeah.
So every year we go and do different things. And you see, they ran the women's prison as if it were a men's prison.
Mm-hmm.
So all the sanitary towels and breast milk, because some of the women come pregnant,
Yeah.
and babies being born in prison, all of that, there's no provision for any of the feminine
Needs. And,
needs.
Yeah.
So we decided to tackle that and work with it. The churches know. And of course, with my Bible study, then after we've done 2 years, the leaders meeting said, oh, well, let's take Auntie Mercy's Bible studies group has a project, so the church adopted it.
Yeah.
So it takes real specific action and needling everybody to get the church to do something for women.
You paint us quite a bleak picture, and yet you are there, and you've been saying this for a while, and something must have nurtured that in you, and also you are very devout. So how is all of that? How does?
You mean how did I come to this?
I mean, it's just that there's clearly much to that you identify that's very, very, very bleak. That's not changing, and the women themselves, the people you are trying to help.
See, things are changing, but not in the church.
Right.
You see, the people who come on TV with the women's issues, they are the people I relate to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because right now, things that in our traditions were unmentionable, you have younger women creating groups to deal with those things.
Right.
And while these older women are still not doing anything about it. So once the younger women have caught hold of this view that women are simply human and they have needs and the needs have to be met, I think that is, for me, that is where the hope is. That you can't tell an 18-year-old girl that you don't talk about menstruation and buying pads, and that people don't have pads so they can't go to school, which is what was happening. And the girls just picked it up.
Yeah.
So the hope is in the younger generation who have managed to clean themselves of these traditional taboo subjects.
And are they using religious language or contexts? No, they're not either. That's interesting. So what I'm hearing is
they are religious. Some of them, a lot of people go to church here or are Muslims or something.
Yeah.
But they don't use religious language.
That's not their forum. That's not their.
No. They're not doing it because they are doing it from the context of human rights.
Right. Yes. And so religion is identified as quite fixed, not socially progressive, and so it's
which is part of what I always say. That's my failure because I came specifically immersed myself into these NGOs to make sure that I give the message that religion is a two-edged sword. And that the part that has been cutting and cutting and cutting as the negative part, there are positive things that religion does and can do its own. One of the blocks is how people read the Bible.
Yeah.
It's in the Bible, and the Bible says. So we do a lot of Bible studies in which I say, yeah, I know this thing is written like this, but why was it written like this, and what was happening? The normal kind of things that you do in a school. And I try to have people come up with interpretations of texts that will help us grow out of where we are. But the usual use of the Bible, it is still, quote, the Bible said.
So it's not possible to say, or is it possible to say sometimes the Bible is wrong?
No.
That is not.
That is not
an option. So it's
you just say that the interpreters were wrong, or sometimes say, the translation is not quite correct, and then you undermine it a little bit.
Or you have very different texts, and you say, this text says that, but this text
says
you can do that. Yeah.
You have to go that way.
Yeah.
But the Bible text quoted wherever the verse is can touch. It's correct.
But there's such problematic text that suggests that if a beautiful woman is captive, if you've overpowered her, you can take her.
Yeah. And then they'll tell but this happens in our culture too. That's part of our problem.
Right.
A lot of the ancient things that are in the Bible are also current.
Right.
In our culture.
And legitimated by it. The custom is legitimated by the
legitimated by the
and the other way around. Yeah.
And then you have to say whether it's in the Bible or it's being done today. That doesn't make it right because somebody is suffering. And I don't think God brought us into this world to come and suffer this kind of useless suffering.
Yeah.
There is suffering that has to, not this kind of thing. So it's very difficult, at least for me, it has been really difficult to get women move beyond what they hear from the pulpit. Very, very.
Is there scope? And I will let Katie take over in a minute with some questions. Must have questions too. I'm doing all the talking. Just lastly, for me, has there been any progress or scope working with the men? Because surely they have to be on board as well. They have to. Is there working with boys maybe?
Yeah. At the center, I think there are two programs we had that we specifically made sure that we had boys. And then I don't know where they are now with that, but both in the circle and at the institute, we started the system of using the language of masculinities, getting the men to say, why are we men? What does it mean to be a man? From the circle and then from here. So it's beginning, and people are, some men and some women are beginning to see that maybe the men too are under some kind of oppression that they themselves don't realize because they think it is positive for them. They think they benefit from.
But you clearly did in creating the circle of concerned women theologians and this centre, you clearly, I get the sense that a space needed to be created just for women to talk to each other. And,
we did, at least in the 70s that we started, we just needed space to talk.
Yeah.
And maybe now there are so many spaces to talk, but at that time these things didn't exist. And even right here, since when I came, I think maybe the second or third year, Anglican women from the cathedral, the Anglicans had some women's conference or whatever, and I was to do the Bible studies all the 4 days. The first day, the priest of that church came and sat in, and you couldn't get the women to ask questions or respond to anything except to repeat what you said. Then the second day, the priest came when the question and answer period was going on, and I think most of them didn't see that he had come and he was sitting in the back. But since I was sitting in front, I already saw him.
Mm.
So after that session, I went and said, "Did I say anything wrong?"
Mm.
"Oh, Auntie Mercy, no, it's not like that." I said, "Yes. You came the first day and these women shut up. They wouldn't say anything because you were here."
Mm.
But and then he didn't come that next day.
He got the message.
I've had some fun with these things. So, no, they stick up for the traditional. They can tell you that if you do anything negative to a priest, you are going to hell. You don't say anything negative. I said, yes, when I'm in hell, I find a lot of the priests there, because they will go there first. By the time I land there, they are already there.
Yeah.
So it's like that. The respect is there that if you got the priests to on your corner,
Mm.
things will move. And that's why I'm happy that now Trinity is beginning to have a program here at the center that is looking at gender. When I came at first, they used to come to the opening meetings, some stayed for the workshop and so on, and then like 2-3 years, they stopped. I said, I don't care whether I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for the women, so whether you come or not, it's not my business. And then I used to be the warden for the women's hall. I fought the school and left over this using the place as a guest house.
Mm.
So I left. But the girls used to call me to their little meetings and so on, and then they also stopped coming. Okay, I do come for you. Then I was in my office was there. 2 of the women came and said, "Madresi, we wanted to invite you to this and that." And they talked to me. And I said, "Oh, how come now you are coming to invite me?" They said, "It's not us." And they told me the story of how one of the women was told by a colleague that if she doesn't stop coming to this center, she will see what they will do to her in her church when it comes to stationing.
That's disheartening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the women backed off, even the women here, they backed off the center for a while. I don't know, but there's always 1 or 2 who will come in spite of everything else.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they started coming back, and now there's a program that it's even a compulsory course that they are taking on gender.
And what is taught in the gender course? And
I
then
think Joyce,
let's swap places.
Yeah, I think Joyce will be able to, because it is her time that they've started this gender.
Yeah.
Joyce will. Uno, come and explain a little bit what is going on in this
In the gender course.
Well, so from February this year, we've been organizing gender studies in ministry workshop for all the students. We are discussing gender studies in 3 areas. We are looking at social issues, we're looking at legal issues, and then we're also looking at biblical and theological issues. Each student is supposed to take all these courses or workshops before they graduate. Initially when we started, it was not graded. So it's just a workshop, like an interaction that we were having for the students. But from this semester, it's going to be graded. And
so that tells me that it's
yes,
regarded much more
yes,
as something more important.
Yes, and actually, the students are enjoying it. First, because it's a workshop, so it gives them a lot more room for interaction. And then their resource people are also not their lecturers. They're people that we bring from outside to come and talk to them. And so we are able to see the level of thinking or the interpretation the students give to certain issues, especially on gender issues. How have you found it?
What have you found? What kinds of tendencies?
Well, for example, during the legal issues, let me start with the social issues. So we got this resource person from the Gender Studies Department from the University of Ghana to come and talk to the students, and we were discussing roles, gender roles, and the fact that we have a lot of assumptions, that we have assumed that, for example, it is women who have to bath the babies and back them and feed them. And we think that that's how we met it. She says it's a Ghanaian thing to feel that that's how we met it, and so it must continue that way. But when you go outside Ghana to other African countries, you see men carrying the babies at the back. So the fact that they met it like that doesn't mean that it can't change. And you hear the arguments between the students, some thinking that, yes, men can also help with this and can help with that, but they think the approach is not, the best, because it's as if the women are demanding it and we have to ask nicely. And so that the classes are mostly very interactive. And by the time the students leave here, they understand that what we're trying to do is not to impose our ideologies on them, but we are asking, or we are interrogating their already formed perceptions about the gender roles and what we think as a seminary is the appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
Because we tell them that when they graduate from here, they become opinion leaders in their churches, in their communities, and you have families going to them to solve their various domestic problems, spanning from violence to legal issues. And they must at least have a first-hand information on what to say so that they don't worsen the situation. For example, if somebody comes to you with a violent situation, if as the minister you were able to put your foot down and say that, husband, I think that you're wrong, he would take it, he would accept that, than anybody else, even if it's from the family or from another woman saying that to him. So we trying to let them understand that they have a lot of power as ministers, and how they use that power is very important. And that is why we're trying to conscientize them on the need to be just in their attempt to resolve some of these domestic issues. We've also had biblical and theological reflections or discussions, and I think those mainly focused on being gender sensitive with liturgy or the liturgical space. And one of the interesting things we did was to reword one or two of the songs, for example, that are sung, during church services, and that it doesn't hurt anything to let everybody feel like a part of the community. So where you have man, we put people, or where you have
inclusive language.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we try to encourage inclusive language, and I just put that hymn in one of our public lectures that we had. We had a SESCA public lecture, and I put one of the hymns in there, and the reaction was really interesting. And the president said, "Well, if you have any questions, please go and see Joyce. She's the one." But I feel that for me it's encouraging because it's a platform to gradually push our ideas.
How long have you been? So you were one of the big movers and shakers behind this, and you too, Joyce. How long have you been doing this?
You mean like the workshop?
In a formal way, the workshops, yeah.
The workshops just started.
Okay.
With the students.
With the students,
but
yes.
with the women.
But we've had.
So you've gone into communities and
yes.
Yeah. But with the students, it's
yes.
quite
yes, and why it's very important to have started with the students is that just like we all, I don't know what is out there, but for us here, what your teacher says is very important. Mm-hmm. If you have a class 1 or grade 1 pupil and the teacher gives them a certain instructions, it doesn't matter what mommy says or what daddy says, it's what the teacher says that stands. And my teacher says we do it this way and not that way. And we look at the ministers in the same light, that they wield a lot of power. Yeah. And so it is very important what we are teaching them to go and say out there. So if we get them, even though I think that the duration is not enough, I mean, we still need more time, we need more discussions. But for a start, it's good for me. There've already been talks about making it a part, like a program, like a course. For students. So now it's a requirement for graduation.
That's excellent.
So we are heading somewhere at least. To have started the discussions with the students, I think is a big step. And we're praying for funding. Because we need to pay the resource people that we bring from outside, and for them to continue to come.
So how are you funded? Is it donations or is it endowments or?
Is it for with respect to
individuals?
Right.
With respect to the gender studies workshop, right now it's a seminary that is giving honorarium to the resource people, but that's kind of limits us. Right. If we're able to to find funding, then we can fish wide, or throw our
So you're not funded in the same way that the other courses are funded.
The other courses they are taught by
lecturers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is taught by
people that are coming from outside, so they have to pay them separately. Yeah. So it's been interesting. It's been really, really interesting, and the reaction of students. And I've been doing evaluations, I give them evaluation forms, for them to fill and for me to have an idea of what they think. And most of the time at the back where you leave the space for any other comments, they would say, oh, it would be good if this is a regular course, and it would be good if we can have this for a longer period of time. And so we're looking at how we can kind of create something that will suit.
But I found that today, and I find it when I teach back home, the questions are there, aren't they? They gave us Song of Songs to teach today, so you can imagine where the questions lay. But the questions are there, and I think it's wonderful that you've begun to create a space where they
for them to ask those questions.
and that they are receiving you generally with enthusiasm.
I was just talking to one of the final year students because they have biblical issues next week, and they were saying, the whole semester we haven't had any workshop. When is our workshop coming up? So that's why I'm calling you. Your workshop is scheduled for next month. So they're unsure and they want to come and listen for more. So I hope that we're able to keep it going and we're able to reform it.
And what's your own background? Is it academic or is it from the church, or what's brought you here?
Well, I'm administrative. Okay, I work with the circle, and then when the circle moved from the general coordinatorship moved from Geneva to South Africa, then I started working with the institute. I was working with the circle as their liaison officer, and then I worked with the institute as a management assistant, and I've been working here ever since. It's been almost 20 years plus. But my academic background, I did human resource management, and then I have a master's in development policy. And I looked at education policy. So right now, thanks to all the wisdom that I've tapped from intimacy. I was just telling her that last weekend we had a public lecture for the Center for the Study of Christianity in Africa. And we had a resource person coming from South Africa, from KwaZulu-Natal. And then she was saying, Joyce, I'm going to be stalking you. You need to get back to school and you need to get your PhD. And then my boss says, you have all that it takes. We just need the paper to show for it. So it's been wonderful working here. I've gathered a lot of experience, especially from the women, from the women that we've had here, and I've learned so much, and it's so fulfilling to do this kind of work, because when you're able to put a smile on somebody else's faces, it's more rewarding than any monetary reward that you would get. So
I would love to see a workshop in action.
Do you have the marriage thing, the poster that says, "Will you have this man as your auditor?" It should be on my computer, but since you people came and put things in folders and things, I can't find it.
I know, I have everything on my desktop, and people see it and they're shocked, and but I don't like folders because I can never
remember where you put them.
Which folder do I put? It could go here, it could go there, so yes, so I'm with you.
And it gets complicated by
Can you find
day.
it? Because if you can find it, it shows the critical place that marriage holds in this violence against women that you. Every step of the marriage activity, from the traditional marriage into what they say in church, it's all there.
Right. Yeah.
It's like
But
the woman is there to be
legitimizes.
violated.
Yeah.
Everything is
That's right. Yeah.
As the marriage.
Yeah, but because it's still in our own culture too. It's so embedded in structures of ownership.
Yeah.
And women taking their husband's name and so on. It's all very whether you like it or not, but it's still very much.
It is.
part
And
of
you
that.
see, this name thing. When I was in Itwot, I was known by the name. Don't talk to message. Bring her the name issue. Because you see, like for me, I had said I'm not taking any man's name. I don't have that man's blood in my veins. I don't mind having my father's name because at least we share the same DNA.
Yeah.
So I will take my husband's name. I was in this country. We got married here, and then the Swiss said my husband couldn't accompany me if his name is not in my passport. Okay, so we go to the passport office, and then I found the person who was the passport officer was a schoolmate of mine. So we told them, oh, never mind, when are you leaving? They said, we have a 4 o'clock flight. By the time you come to us, your passport will be ready with your husband's name. They're fine. So I leave my passport, we went off doing this and that, and we got back. When I took the passport, I didn't even open it.
Yeah.
You know, because I was sure all they did, and it was a new passport when I gave, was to insert his name where it said spouse or. It's in the car I opened, and they had changed my name. They just took my old passport, dumped it somewhere, and wrote me a new passport with Mrs. Oduyoyi.
Yeah.
So
I think you would have been
if I didn't have
furious.
if I didn't have a flight at 4 o'clock, I would have been back there.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so endemic. I think whatever instructions it is he gave, the people say, what kind of nonsense? We can just write a new passport.
It's shocking, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's how it goes. And me, this name thing so concerned me that when I was getting married, I actually went to the marriage thing here to get the marriage act, and they brought me a huge tome like this, and I opened and read, and I saw that in black and white. If it was in the days where we had phones, I would have copied it. That it says the new couple can take a name.
Right.
It didn't say the man takes the wife's name or the wife takes. They said you create a name for that new family. And then we did the easiest thing, take the man's name.
Yeah.
And that was when I said, no, we are not taking anybody's name. And that's where we are. You know, it's so easy to just carry on the tradition.
And I think subliminally, because a lot of these things, we just accept them, we don't question them. And I think that's, we were talking to the students earlier, it's about, we can't change the biblical text very easily, sometimes we want to, but it's about just drawing attention to what's problematic about it, what values it reflects.
And when you draw attention to the problems, you don't like it and you're being subversive. Right here, this name thing, when I was warding or whatever that was, the senior girl was preparing the rooms for the incoming students. And she came, I had an office, our offices were there before we moved here. So I went to look at them. And then I said, why is all this, everybody Mrs. this, Mrs. A and Mrs. C and so on? He said, oh, they are the married women. I said, what has that got to do with their theological education, whether they are married or not married? I don't want to see any of this Mrs. anywhere. Write their names only. And if they are already ordained, because some of them are already ordained and they have come to be part of us. If they are already ordained, put reverend. That is the only thing that is relevant in this institution, not whether they are male or female or married or not married. You know what she told me? She says the married woman will be very angry. I said, why? She says, you know, the missus is very important to them. They end their missus. So with that kind of attitude, what can you do?
Yeah.
But leave them to end their missus and be treated that way. And we have horrible stories of marriage counseling that goes on. Right here, there's a woman who died in this country. The man had been beating this woman, beating her. You go to the minister, and the minister said, will tell you, well, when you got married, you said for better, for worse. When you were receiving the better, you didn't come to me. Now that it is worse, you are coming to me. Go and take the worse. And she goes back, and she goes back, and she comes. You know, finally the man pushed this woman out of the window. She fell and died. So I said, I said, she's a foolish woman, because why did she go back? Because the priest says go back.
Yeah.
That's what Joyce is saying.
Yeah.
That the minister's word is really taken very seriously.
Yeah.
So they better have the right words to give to this woman. That woman went and died because the minister said she should go back and take the worst, because she already took the better.
Mm.
We have that both in the church and in the law too. The law,
In the law itself,
especially if there are children. He's the father. He has a right to see them. You will take them there, which means there's contact. And we have, what is that awful statistic? I think it's 2 women a week in England are killed by their husband or boyfriend or their male
The
partner.
statistics are very bad, and it, as you said, a lot of it is focused on marriage.
Yeah.
A lot of it. Or friendships that went bad, or whatever. A lot of it is around marriage. Because right from the beginning, the marriage has become an issue of ownership, that the man owns the woman.
Yeah.
And once you get that, everything is.
Yeah. And as we discussed it, it's so subliminal if it's in the language and the assumptions we make. It's
So here, part of what I have used in my educational work is the proverbs.
yeah.
The proverbs in
in
our language.
In your language.
Mhm. The kind of things we say. There's one that's really, for me, what shows the underlying factor is the proverb that says, if a tall woman carries nuts on her head, the birds will eat the nuts. First of all, what this proverb is saying is a woman should not be tall.
Mm-hmm.
And what that says is a woman should not be outstanding. And usually that is what happens. A woman that is outstanding will be cut down.
Mm-hmm. And she has it coming. It's
She has it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, then I ask, now who has the right to decide how tall a woman should be?
Yeah.
I think it is God given how tall you become. Why should a human being say that you shouldn't be taller than a man?
Mm.
You know, and yet, even visually, we've got the idea that the husband has to be taller.
And you see women sometimes physically adapting their posture, don't you? Tall women who are awkward about taking up too much space.
Taking up too much
With men, you see how men spread
Oh,
their legs
when
on the
they are-
train, they take up so much room.
When they are short,
Yeah.
they go like this.
Mm. Yeah.
And then, but my mother brought me up, shoulders back, head high, hey, don't stand.
Your mother, in the interview I read, sounds amazing. She sounds like she was like you, with a strong personality.
No, we were brought up that way. And so, for me, when I came out into the world and I found that the whole world was not like my home, I was really in trouble.
Yeah. And you're one of 9 children.
First of 9 children.
First of 9 children. Gosh.
So, so this marriage thing has been one of my base for all the discussions. And the thing I was asking for was actually done by men. They did a poster showing a couple, nicely dressed, white dress and so on, and the woman doing this. And then they say, will you take this man for your wedded husband? And when she beats you, you shut up. Or when she takes your hard-earned money, you keep quiet. And I think about 10 or 12 of those things. And then at the end she says, I don't. So I use that for discussing issues in marriage.
Yeah. And I like to tell them that in Jewish tradition, it is custom that on the day of the wedding you sign a divorce agreement. In the event, I mean, it sounds very unromantic, but the realism is that this marriage may not work and you cannot do with the woman, and it's signed before witnesses, and in the event that the marriage ends, the obligations at that point are laid down there. It doesn't always work in practice,
but at
but
least
it's
theoretically it's there.
that it isn't a kind of giving of yourself for whatever he wants to do with you.
And it trickles down to how the boys teach the girls in school.
Yeah.
Right down, they decide already that the first citizens of the US.
Do you have that in here? The way, I mean, in our culture, it's quite casual for men to constantly comment on women and girls. And I find I have a son and a daughter, and the constant commentary. Or the only thing ever said to my daughter is, "Isn't that a lovely dress?" And very rarely that the equivalent happens to
the boys.
To the boy, and that. There's only one step from that, you know, as a girl matures, to constantly be just commenting on to the exclusion of everything else. And then you have this, because you're beautiful, it's your fault if you get the kind of attention you may then not want. And yet you're programmed all your life to
be
put yourself on display, and
and then you put yourself on display, then you're blamed for doing what you were taught to do.
It's very discouraging to hear that some things everywhere
this is universal.
A lot of work to be done. How was your experience of? I saw you studied in Cambridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your experience of that in the 1960s?
No, I wasn't. None of these women's things were in my.
Feminism wasn't.
No, because me, I never even could recognize that the men were supposed to be different. You know?
Yeah.
Because I taught school. First of all, I went to co-educational school. Yeah. Some of the boys were more stupid than I was, and I was brighter than some boys. So for me, the gender thing never troubled me. And in Cambridge, I had my head into these studies that it was afterwards I was thinking. I was doing dogmatics.
Yeah.
And all the section about patristics.
Yeah.
You know, I used to stop in the library. Why am I reading patristics? So, you know, I asked, where are the matristics? But you know, that all of that at that time point was just a joke. I never even thought of it. And then when you get into the medieval period and you start seeing these women, you say, oh, so the women were there, nobody really bothered to put them on the program for me to study them.
Right.
Yeah. And they put Augustine and Cyprian and people like that. And they never thought that they would be equivalent for me. It wasn't part of my issue. I was busy. I went to do dogmatics because I wanted to know where all these church teachings come from, if they are not from the Bible.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? And what that did for me is to question everybody about everything. Because in dogmatics, you are being taught, you are reading what the church says is to be believed.
Yeah.
But there are always the so-called heretics that they push at. And most of the time I was with the heretics when I'm reading.
Yeah.
So I've lived my life.
I always avoided dogmatics because I found the kind of doctrinal things difficult because there seemed so little scope for challenging. So you were much braver than I was, going right in there. And
so that's what tickled me in all my undergraduate theological studies. I thought, where did all these things come from? Why is so and so wrong and so right?
Yeah.
What's the basis for the right and the wrong here? So that's why I did my graduate studies in there. So you can imagine all my 2 years, my head was in the library of, with Augustine, trying to read Augustine in Latin and all those kinds of nonsense. But actually, it put me in the mood for questioning everybody.
Yeah.
Always looking for the other side of the story is what I learned.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You haven't stopped, have you?
I haven't stopped.
Yeah.
And Cambridge at that time, I don't know whether it's still the same. At that time was very the color issue was not there. The race issue was not there. I'm sure Cambridge was very class conscious.
Well, it certainly is now.
And that I'm sure is still. So the general attitude, even from the women who were the college aunts who look for accommodation for students and so on, you can feel from them that they know that for you to get to Cambridge, you are either very brainy or there's a lot of money behind you.
Right.
So nobody treated us, the blacks, like we were nothing, because they knew for me to get there, I must have come from something.
Yeah.
So we didn't get any of the racist things there, and we just went everywhere we were.
What about when you then went to the US? What's that?
The US, I went to US teaching most of the time. My first were visits from the World Council, going to do programs at the World Council. Then I got all these visiting professorships.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, usually the seminary environment is kosher.
Right.
Yeah. You're just in there, you're all studying, you're all professors, so you don't feel that. And I personally, I'm not a very outgoing person. I don't go out to cinemas or to restaurant or anything to feel any of this nonsense. So I didn't get this first-hand racism thing.
Yeah.
Maybe because I personally avoided what would have created those things.
Right.
They just never came my way. There's only one of these university and seminary campuses that somebody warned me, and I go for walks every morning.
Yeah.
And somebody who met me walking along one of those streets saw me later and said, "Prof, those people on that street, be careful, because they may set their dogs on you." I said, "But I've walked these streets, there's nobody." I said, "I'm just warning you, they are not very kind."
Yeah.
On that, so don't walk that street. So after I said that, I didn't walk on that street, but which means there were people there, but I think, you know, I looked so harmless, nobody bothered me.
But you know Musa Dube,
Musa Dube, yes.
She and I work together, and we're friends, and she tells quite a different story from going to the US and England. And she said it wasn't always, so the racism wasn't always vicious. It was sometimes much more shrouded in friendliness and acceptance. And she said then that was, you know, so
you can feel that.
Yeah,
that is what she was saying. I didn't get, as I said, I didn't get the blatant racism. I mean, if you didn't invite me, I always base things on people being uneducated or foolish, which Brigadier Abam said to me. Your word is black and white in that way. Your word doesn't work that way. Because if you are doing your party and you don't invite me, so what? I'm not going to read into that it's because you don't like me. It's just that the kind of people you want at your parties. I don't belong to that. And if I don't come to your party, I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
I never interpreted exclusion, class or race. I just said people have a right to associate with whom they want to associate. So
we've actually both been surprised because we've never been to Ghana before. But one of the things, one of the places we went to was the Odu Castle. Was that what it's called?
Ozu Castle.
Osu Castle. We went there, and it's so shocking to go there because it's so small, and so you know the governor was upstairs, and the slaves were in that awful.
Oh, that was.
They were so.
That must be Elmina.
We're going to Elmina on Thursday.
Okay, but you are
but this was apparently there was a kind of pre-selection
that
happened there, and it was so awful because, you know, our ancestors were the people who were sitting upstairs at the table, and they cannot pretend
that they didn't know what was happening down there.
It's not like the Holocaust where a lot of Germans it's a sausage factory, and that's not true either. But there was a kind of a way you can say, well, maybe, but you can't in a situation like that. And we've actually been surprised at that we haven't encountered any we haven't encountered any hostility. And
No,
it's very
I
recent
mean,
history still.
Ghanaians are super hospitable. Even just yesterday, we were coming from a Samankas, we were going to one of the such motor schools,
Mhm.
and there was a police van and so on. And my sister said, hey, they are having operations. I said, what kind of operations? You know, there are a lot of Nigerians who live in this area. I said, oh, no wonder. Ghana is so hospitable. It doesn't matter. Everybody comes here.
Mm.
All the Nigerians, when they run away from their chaos, they
Yeah.
come here and join in creating more chaos in
Yeah.
Ghana. So that one is like people feel this,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I think it's because we are not super rich and we are not super poor, and everybody is welcome. I think if we get super rich, we will start discriminating.
Yeah, well, I think you have a point, and what
Yeah.
we're seeing now with the migration crisis in Europe and North America,
Yeah.
with people stopped at the border from coming in to escape problems that were created by the rich countries, our rich countries. It's very disheartening.
Yeah, the migration.
People would rather say we'll just drown in the ocean rather than knock on our door. It's
For those of us who have been unfortunate in knowing the history of these things, it's really traumatizing just to see.
Mm.
And then the way the Latin Americans react is quite different. You know, the pilgrimage that they are now making towards the US,
The Hondurans.
the Honduras, and now 2 other countries have joined,
Yeah.
and it's becoming extreme. I don't know how good old Trump is ready to handle that.
Well, he's ready for just
He's sending
blocking.
troops.
Yeah, I know it's
That's his style.
horrible. In a country that the problems were created by American administrations, weren't they? Yeah.
But that's human nature.
Oh, Katie,
We've got well over an hour of footage.
Oh my
on the
goodness,
phone.
we've kept you talking.
So my phone is about to die because I think that's the biggest file it can
The
cope
limit of
with.
the endurance.
Yeah, it gave me a warning 10 minutes ago, so but I didn't want to.
Oh,
Okay, no, like we were just talking. We stopped the interview long ago.
yeah,
we didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Can I have a more formal thank you then for the videos for when we edit it, so that it doesn't just
Also,
cut
when you
off?
edit, you can,
Yeah.
Mercy Oduyoye, we are absolutely delighted, and on behalf of the Shiloh Project, we want to thank you for your time and
Thank you.
for your wisdom.
Thank you. I'm happy to be among the women of Shiloh.
Thank you.
Thank you.